These red cameras, I mean, they look cool. They sure do. But guess what? That's not a good enough reason to upgrade. The truth is, if you don't know how to use your Canon, Sony, or your Fuji that you have now, you're not going to use it really well, then you can't expect upgrading to cameras like this to solve your issues. A camera is not going to solve your content problems. That happens up here. With that disclaimer out of the way, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 4 main reasons why we personally love shooting on red cameras like these. And then we'll take you through the 6 main considerations if you're thinking about upgrading to a red, including the drawbacks. And we'll give you a walkthrough of exactly how we set up both the V-Raptor and the Komodo for our films. Now, we've been shooting on red for many years. We've owned nearly a dozen over that time. And currently, we have 2 Komodos, 2 V-Raptors for documentary work, for commercials, and for making our YouTube content like this. So here are the 4 main reasons we choose red for the vast majority of our projects. Number 1, the codec and the color pipeline. Ooh, it is amazing. Red has a proprietary RAW format, Red RAW, which has a very wide color space. Now we're going to dive into that a little bit more later, but when paired with their Red Cine software, it's a very quick way to tune your image and just get mind-blowing results. Now, number 2 is the dynamic range of these cameras. It's almost unrivaled. Quick recap, dynamic range is the ability of your camera to retain detail in the shadow and in the highlights of your image. If you're shooting inside with a bright window in the background, most cameras are going to lose detail in that window, making it look messy, distracting, and not as well produced. Now, the dynamic range of a red, like this one, is rated at 16.5 stops, allowing for way more ability to hold detail in both dark and bright parts of your image, compared to a camera like the FX3 or X-T5, where you're going to get several stops less room. Now, we're super intentional filmmakers, and so we love to avoid distracting, blown-out highlights in our images, and that's why the extra dynamic range is huge for us. Now, number 3, shooting in Red RAW allows you to adjust settings like ISO and white balance after you shoot. Now, ideally, you're intentional, so we do this right when we film, but mistakes happen. Sometimes we gotta fix it in post. Sometimes we wanna tweak it in post, and it's great to be able to dial these settings in and still get a great image. You can even adjust this in playback. You can just pull up your image and adjust the ISO or the white balance right there. And lastly, we just love the versatility of the red cameras, in that we can pair it with a 200K motion control robot, like that thing right back there. We can do very high-end visuals at 8K resolution, or we can strip it down and go handheld and shoot a feature documentary or a commercial shoot in 6K and get a balance of file size and image. To have this powerful of an image and be able to shoot it over 120 frames per second while still shooting in 6K is wild. You can go all the way up to 600 frames at 2K. So it's that versatility in the ways that we can go super big with these cameras, but also strip down and super quick, that makes them our staple. Okay, remember, your camera should always be driven by the story, what it is you're looking to say. There's no one right solution, and a great camera is not going to solve for poor technique. That said, let's dive into the 6 main considerations if you're thinking about upgrading to one of these guys, a red. First, as a director and a DP, I just love the image that comes out of the red and what it can produce. Part of this is the sensor. Look at this thing on the V-Raptor. It's just massive, allowing for a great shallow depth of field where that's relevant for your story. But also the color pipeline, in that it shoots 16-bit RAW, so 444, whereas many Sony or Canon cameras are going to shoot just 10 or 12-bit at 420 or 422. What the heck does that actually mean? The 16-bit refers to the bit depth, or how many colors the camera can read per pixel. So 8-bit can produce 16 million colors. That's the amount it can resolve. But moving to a camera that is 10-bit means 1 billion colors. So 16-bit, it's not just a small difference from 12 or 10-bit, it's actually orders of magnitude better. And what all of that better means is that it's a better ability to represent the colors in your image. You're gonna get far smoother gradations in things like a night sunset, or anything with complex color patterns. All of that to say that shooting in Red RAW at 16-bit 444 is gonna let you get amazing images, rich colors, and lots of room to push the image in post-production. All that's gravy for us. Now, the proof is in the pudding, and it's all about the images that come out of a red camera. We always shoot in R3D format, their proprietary RAW format, And we often only use MQ or LQ, medium quality or low quality, since we have way more resolution than needed when we're delivering for YouTube or commercial clients, and we don't often do complex VFX where the lower compression rate is going to be a challenge. Second, paired with this amazing bit depth and the ability to shoot RAW, you're also going to be able to get crazy high resolutions, up to like 8K on the V-Raptor. Now, I get that sometimes it's like those razor commercials, like now with 17 blades for a smoother shave.
New Gillette with FlexBall technology.
It kind of feels like that. And you gotta wonder how much is just way more than I need, right? But here's how we make use of that resolution. With the V-Raptor, it shoots up to 8K, but in most cases, we're only shooting 6K, which makes the file sizes more manageable, such as when we're doing an interview or we're shooting slow motion, which is going to be even larger files. Now, note that when you're shooting with a RED camera, when you go to a lower resolution, so 6K instead of 8K, it windows the sensor, so you're using less of the lens and you're going to get a tighter image. Now, there is a little hack or a workaround for this. If you want to use the full sensor, but you only want to say shoot in 4K, then you can switch to ProRes instead of Red RAW. So when you've got a long interview and you want the look of that massive sensor, but you don't want hours of 8K footage, then ProRes can be an awesome option to consider. Now, if you're curious why all of this talk of file sizes, I mean, it's because you really do have to be aware of how much you're shooting to ensure you have hard drives to back it all up in the field. I mean, we use these 4 terabyte SanDisk Extreme hard drives, and it's not uncommon for a few days of production to be more than 4 terabytes. And that means media backups in the field, it gets real hard. Alrighty, my friends, this week's episode is brought to you by a really exciting experience that we'll be bringing your way called World Changing Filmmaker. Now, to celebrate the launch, we are giving away our mini course, Storyfinding Hero, entirely free for the next week. All you've got to do is head to storyfirst.com. Being able to find a great story, it's a skill that you can learn and develop. And what better way to prove our point than taking on the ultimate story finding challenge? Challenge accepted. And so we're gonna throw a dart at a map, and wherever it lands, we've got just 60 hours to find and tell a story there. Just head to storyfirst.com and sign up for the live launch of World Changing Filmmaker, and you'll get a code to download the course entirely for free. We actually use these G-RAIDs for editing our larger feature documentaries, sizes of 48 to 144 terabytes. But it's a ton of space and an extra cost to consider when shooting RED. Now, where the 8K really shines for us with a RED is the ability to stabilize in post or to crop in, punch in, if you are doing an interview. We recently had just minutes with DJ Khaled in his backyard to do an interview for a documentary we're working on.
How much money or trophies or accolades, it's about the joy and the happiness.
And we didn't have enough time to set up a second angle. But shooting on 8K allows us to use the resolution as a way to cut in and simulate a second angle. Now, 3, another reason to consider upgrading is how intuitive and helpful the controls on a RED camera are. Right on the screen, I can see and quickly change my shutter speed or angle, my ISO, white balance and tint, frame rate, the resolution, the aspect ratio, all of that without having to go into a deep menu. And then I get this handy histogram where I can see my exposure. And it has these stoplights that light up, so if you're losing detail in the shadow or in the highlights. These are helpful and quick guides so you can really improve your shot. And then if you want, you can check exposure using false color or check focus with edge sharpening, and that's all possible within seconds. Compared to a smaller camera where you're often going to have to dive into multiple menus and touch a tiny screen and hit all kinds of things to actually change the settings you want. I love access to all key settings in a quick and easy way so that we can stay proactive. And it's awesome that I can get a read on my exposure without it being on top of my image. I love a solid waveform or histogram, but when it takes up half or a quarter of my screen, I find that I'm often turning it on and off so that I can see the image and then I can check the exposure and then see the image. And that just slows me down. 4, the color pipeline and Red Cine, Red's free software, it's another reason to consider upgrading. Red Cine lets you load your Red RAW files and quickly adjust basic and advanced settings to create a look. So here I'm adjusting the curve to give the image some more pop and then dialing in the white balance and ISO to have the look I'd like. I can then copy and paste the settings onto another shot, and I can even save a look for later. My absolute favorite part of this software, though, is that you can export a still in super high resolution in seconds. Now, when you shoot in 8K, these stills, they're massive. And that means they can actually be something that you consider selling to your client. More than just social media, these can be used to make merchandise. We've actually had a client turn a still from a RED camera into a billboard for their haunted mansion. On most productions, I'll download the media myself and I'll review it, even doing quick grades at the end of a night to get a sense of how the final look is going to come together in the film, and more so being able to make notes for myself and the team so we can improve the next day. And while I'm doing all of that, it's super easy to export a couple stills and shoot an email to the client with a quick update. They're always super impressed to see such high quality stills from their production. It's a surprise and delight moment that increases your perceived value and builds trust. All of which is going to help you get higher budgets and less revisions. Now, a tip, when you plan to export stills with your RED, it's wise to consider rolling at a higher shutter angle, such as 196 or 90 degrees. That's going to help keep your edges sharp in the still image. So what we'll often do is if we've got this gorgeous wide shot and I know I might want to pull stills, I'll actually adjust the shutter and grab a second take just so I can get the stills. Okay. Now, in talking about why you might consider upgrading to a RED camera, let's take a second to dive into the disadvantages, because it's not all rainbows and sunshines over here in RED camp. First, these cameras sure think they're special. I mean, just trying to turn one on, and they like to take their time. This is the drawback we're going to talk about later. And now we are ready to go. Hopefully you weren't in a hurry. 90 seconds that a camera takes to start up, it can feel like forever when the action is happening right in front of you, and you gotta get going. RED cameras are also more of an investment, so this RED V-Raptor is $25,000 just for the body. Now, even though there's the Komodo, which is much more affordable at $6,000, you really have to keep in mind the accessories, which are always pricey in filmmaking, but even more so on higher-end cameras like these. Now, being a larger, more professional camera, it does have less of that fancy AI features that you're going to find on a camera like the FX3 or a DJI Ronin 4D. Both of those cameras are wild in their ability to track focus and hold on objects and people. Well, RED does have some autofocus. I would say it's really not at the same level. Now, of course, most professional shoots, you're going to be doing manual focus anyways, but it is worth taking note because that AI in those FX3s and the DJI, it's just mind-blowing. I love the FX3 with its autofocus for quick YouTube-type content and the RED for anything where we have more time to really be intentional. Most RED cameras don't have internal ND either, so you're going to need to think of a solution for that. We use magnetic filters on the Iris lenses, and then the Basecamp matte box with variable NDs for our Zeiss lenses. Now, all of that said, this is a professional setup that's used for the largest movies out there. So it's reasonable that you're going to need to take some time to really set it up and build up a kit to get the results you'd like, as opposed to a Sony or a Canon that's going to be ready with far less than that. So with that, let's take a look at our two main setups for the RED V-Raptor and the Komodo. For the small Komodo, we like the small HD Indie monitor with camera control so you can adjust the settings on the screen as opposed to needing to use the built-in screen right here. So that's going to add an SDI cable for the video, a control cable for the settings, plus a third if you don't want to use batteries on the back and you want to have it pull camera power from the battery back here. Now, the other main accessories we love are the side handle, and we love to use the one from RED that comes with the record button right here. And then you've got the V-Lock adapter on the back so that we can use V-Lock batteries across a lot of our cameras and all of our accessories. The Komodo pairs very well with these Iris lenses. We've got the 21, the 30, and the 45, which are our favorite for the Komodo. Add in your media and you've got a total cost of... For the V-Raptor, we use the same side handle from RED. It has a special small HD monitor made for this camera. And then we have a small rib on the side, which is great for holding the camera, but also has a lot of different mounting ports for accessories. Then on top, we've got a little adapter here. This is made for quick release for a tentacle sync holder on top, so we can wirelessly get timecode matched with our audio. And then we have an RF to PL adapter to use these Zeiss lenses. Now, we love the one from Breakthrough Filters, where you can insert a variable ND and use that as a quick way for controlling your light and keeping the camera small. Now, this setup we pair with the Zeiss CP3 lines, and we've got one 50mm Supreme Prime. This full set with the media is going to be... So it's definitely a considerable investment. I mean, that's a fancy car or even a solid down payment on a house. But we've used these cameras for commercial projects over multiple six figures. We've done $1 million documentaries and super small shoots in remote villages that are in these far off places. Now, hopefully we've given you a solid understanding of why we choose to shoot Red and why you might consider upgrading. But as always, learn the fundamentals first. Don't look to solve any problems you're having or fix your filmmaking with some fancy new camera. Now, if this video has helped you, hitting that like button or subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment, that's the fuel that helps us devote the time and resources to bring you more content like this. And I'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite camera right now? And give me one reason why. I just told you mine, now it's your turn. Alrighty, time for you to get out there and tell it with intent.